For my history report, I interviewed my grandmother that I call Ma. Ma has experienced a lot in her life, including a young marriage and having 4 children, a few of which were pretty scary, but none of those are what impacted her life the most. Ma gave me 2 different moments that changed her life. One of them was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the other was 9/11 and meeting George W. Bush just months before his presidency campaign started. My ma was in the 6th grade in band class when news of JFK's assassination broke in Quanah. She remembers vividly the moment she dropped her tenor saxophone and began to cry at the news that her beloved president had been killed in a town that she held dear. She looked at President Kennedy and his wife as a fairy tale. They were young and beautiful, crazy about each other, with many small children. It was everything she could ever want. This is also the first moment she understood the hatred people could have for each other. Before JFK, my grandmother had never come face to face with hatred of this magnitude. She never understood that lives could be taken simply over something like politics or religion. This changed her whole perspective on life. She realized that life is short, and although there is immense hatred among some, her duty is to love others the way God loves them. Her second event was the horror of 9/11 and the honor of meeting George W. Bush. She vividly remembers sitting in a doctor's office in Lubbock, Texas, when the news broke that the first Twin Tower had been hit. She said she had never experienced this type of fear, but then quickly remembered her 6th grade band class when JFK was assassinated. She remembers the fear that ripped through her as the second tower fell, followed by the Pentagon as well as the fourth flight. Some of the fear came from the fact that she and my grandfather had been in New York City just a year before for the New York Marathon. Quickly, they prayed that it was a pilot error or some other horrible accident, but it became clear that this was a terrorist attack. She wrestled with the fact that she had just been attacked on her own soil. News came out that her beloved nation had been attacked due to her religion. Extremist Muslims who hated her God and believed it was so wrong that people like her must die. She knew about Muslims, but this was the first time she saw them in her world. 5 years before 9/11, in 1996, my grandmother met President George W. Bush, and after many conversations with him in the following months, she was elated when he decided to run for the presidential office and eventually winning in 2001. Little did she know that this meeting 5 years before 9/11 would hold such a connection to that horrid day of September 11th, 2001. In the months following 9/11, she watched President George W. Bush hold a nation together in a time of grief and fear, the same way he held her granddaughters just years earlier. This changed the way my grandmother handled everything. She no longer went anywhere with her guard down and was on high alert of anything that could be even a little bit out of the ordinary. She said that 9/11 made all of us suspects to be feared, vetted, and unarmed. Terror was introduced that day, and I mourned the passing of trust and ease of life. Unlike me, she did not grow up with fear instilled in her. She grew up believing that flying in an airplane was simple and the ease of life that was expected. After JFK and 9/11, the world as she knew it was changed. It changed into the world that I know. These two events impacted the way she raised her children, and thus how my parents raised me. Although this world can be terrifying, they all raised me to believe that whatever happened, God was there for us to lean into in times of trouble and fear. Even if life was different now, God always had a plan, and trusting in that plan was the only way we could live a life that wasn't fueled by fear and even hate.